if you please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, could I have a roll call, please?
Sir. Alderman Bowman.
Present.
Alderman Bockelman. Here. Alderman Reese.
Here.
Alderman Milner. Present. Alderman Dickerson.
Here.
Alderman Long.
Here.
Alderman Turner.
Here.
Alderman Levison.
Here.
And Mayor Hassett.
Here, and we do have a quorum. Good evening, everyone. Tonight we do have a ceremonial matter. This was something that we usually take care of at our employee appreciation dinner, but one of our recipients was unavailable, so we're going to have her join us now. Mary, if you could join us in here now. All right. I'll let you read then.
Okay.
I'll hold the award.
This is what I read the night that we had our appreciation dinner. Leadership is not always telling people what to do, but is many times done by example. This is done by taking up the slack, responding to people's requests, and keeping a positive and professional demeanor while everything around you is going nuts. Handling 911 calls is a stressful situation, but our Leadership Award recipient is calm, collected, and professional with those who are sometimes stressed, sometimes belligerent, and sometimes crazy. She is someone who knows how to stretch our resources to get the most out of them. This year's Stephen P. Rosher Leadership Award recipient is Mary Osterberg.
Gentlemen, would you join Mary, please? All right, and scoot in just a little bit. Nice smile. And one more time. Thank you.
Congratulations, Mary. Thanks for all your hard work. All right. Okay, that concludes our ceremonial matters tonight. At this time, I'll open the floor to public participation. Anybody who has anything to bring before this board that is not on our already scheduled agenda, please feel free to step forward.
I guess that's me. Do I need to come over here?
Yeah, please be sure to give the clerk your name and address, please.
My name's Annette. Last name Levy. Leathers. Well, we have property at 2200 Chateau.
Is that your residence?
That's actually rental. That's all it was.
All right, good evening.
Good evening. We had a situation about a month ago, 6 weeks ago. Our tenant passed away, and he lived at 2200 Chateau Drive, and we own that property. And we have noticed over the last couple of years that the people that lived across from the property had parked 2 cars from Franklin County, Kansas in front of the house, and they haven't moved for 2 years. And we had asked the people across the street, they own it, if they'd move them, and they said they wouldn't. And so, well, now our tenant passed, and we're planning to sell the property. And so, once again, we're trying to figure out a way to get them to move, because it seems as if they're using the public street as a storage facility for their cars. He actually has 4 vehicles that he parks, 2 in front of our home that never move, and then 2 that he parks past the driveway that he drives. And so I called John, I came by and talked with John here, and he gave me 3 ordinances that he thought might be being broken, and he forwarded those on to the police department. And I spoke with them today, and they told me that the 24-hour limit of vehicles being parked is not being broken because it's not posted. He said the fact that they're out-of-state licenses, that they are current, therefore it's too much paperwork to be going through to have them removed. And then he said, she told me also, it's Officer Miller, I believe. She said that, yeah, they're close to the intersection, but there's not a lot you can do about that other than push them down a little bit. And I asked her, I said, you mean that someone can bring cars and use the public street for a storage facility? She said, well, it doesn't seem right. I said, it doesn't seem right to me. I said, it brings down our property value. and for everybody else in here, we all could be subject to anything. This could happen to you too. And so she suggested that I come here and I bring it before the board and see what can be done about that, or if there is an ordinance that we're not aware of that would address that.
Well, that's an interesting question, and it's funny you asked the question, and I actually have a friend of mine that lives here in town that has a out-of-state car parked on his road, and has asked about it, and kind of the same answers was, you know, it's tagged legally, it's not blocking an intersection, it's not a parking area, but he says the car never moves. He just inquired, thought, well, maybe it's an abandoned vehicle, and this is an interesting question.
Is there nothing that states if the car is not able to be moved? Isn't there, is there something?
It had a flat tire at one point, but they aired it up. And so, I don't know that they may be operational, they may not, I don't know, they've never moved. And we haven't lived there for, 10 years? We lived there for 3 years, and then we ended up turning it into rental property, which has been wonderful, but we're gonna sell it now. And so now I'd really like, and like Officer Miller said, well, I could go to the door and I could ask them to move them, but I can't make them. And so, I'm just wondering, I mean, it's just such a shame. It's Chateau, it's there where the apartments are, and we have the house in the corner, the yellow one.
Okay.
And the neighborhood really has improved over the last 10+ years, and it's a shame that this just makes it kind of look a little bit.
And the gentleman that lives there is the one that owns the cars?
Across the street, he's an elderly gentleman, I don't know his name, it's someone different than when we lived there. But anyway, his son moved here, which is nice, to help him, but he also brought with him 4 cars. And our side of the street that our home is on is where the public parking, the street parking is. And I understand that, and that's what he pretty much said, he said, well, it's street parking, anybody can park here. And I know that there were some days, in days gone by, where you would never just park for 2 years in front of someone else's house. I mean, it's just rude, but I mean, it's not illegal to be rude.
I just thought there was something that vehicles had to be able to, I mean, they had to be functional.
Well, it could be operable, I mean,
Right,
but
absolutely.
if they're, I mean,
But that's supposed to be on private property. That would be on private property.
I thought it was in the street. It is.
So there are no ordinances that prohibit someone from having either a certain number of cars or a certain duration, or use it, because really what it amounts to is he's using public street as a private storage area for his vehicles. And that just seems like surely there's something.
well, I mean, the difficult task there would be proving that it's actual storage. I mean, I'll give you an example. My family, we have 5 vehicles. We don't
Right.
have a driveway, and so we park on the edge of the road. It's gravelled so far over, and all of those vehicles get used. I mean, granted, we don't drive one of them every day of the week, but they're all parked there. So in this case, I mean, it would be, maybe he only has one vehicle he drives that has 3 others. It's proving that, you know, that it's storage. You know, he could say, well, I rotate the use of the vehicle even if he's not.
Right.
I'm not sure how you would be able to enforce that, to be honest. Well, this is a,
Do you think it'd do any good if an officer approached them and asked them just to move their cars out of the way until you sell your home?
It might, I don't know. I've talked with him briefly, and I think my husband did too. What I don't want to do too, is I think that'd be great, and I told the officer, I said, if he would at least move them down, it
Somewhere
would
else.
be helpful. But then, we're selling it to somebody, not knowing that once they buy it, you know, they're gonna have, it's kind of an eyesore. You know, and if I had, like when we lived there, we had a child, and she parked out there, and you know, and it's first come, first served, but those cars never move, and it's interesting, the 2 that he drives, he parks on past the driveway. The 2 that he never drives, he's stuck right there because he didn't want.
well, I see your point. I mean, like in my case, it's only my house and the neighbor's house are on
Right.
the road, so we're not parked in front of anybody else's phone.
Right.
And same as you're saying, you obviously people have more than one car. Even if you have a 1-car driveway, you can only get so many. You have to park at the road, but you're only parked in front of your road. Like you say, it's almost like it's kind of the courteous thing, you know, unless your neighbors.
It's common courtesy.
Yeah, I
that
mean, if
used
your
to
neighbors
be.
say, hey, you know, park there anytime, we don't care, you know, you need the space. But, I don't know that we could have an answer on this tonight.
I have a question.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Does your driveway, like, do the cars sit on the opposite of your driveway, like where you're backing out? Okay,
No,
okay,
no.
okay. I was just curious about that.
Not right, it's not a hazard to us. It's not a hazard, it's just kind of an eyesore.
It's an eyesore.
Mhm.
I'm a relitter, I understand. I understand where you're coming from.
And, you know, HOAs are, kind of take care of things like this, but not everybody lives in a neighborhood that has an HOA.
You pay
and
for it when you do.
Sometimes HOAs are a pain in the neck.
Mhm.
But in this particular case, I can understand why.
It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So our hope is that if there is an ordinance, like Officer Miller told me, and also John told me here, he says, I didn't do an exhaustive search, I just did a kind of a cursory search to kind of see what might apply. Maybe there is something that applies, and if there isn't, is there something we can do to maybe see about adding to an ordinance or improving an ordinance?
Yeah, we're gonna have to, for tonight, we'll have to do a little more research and see what we have, and then, you know,
Okay.
is there something that could be done? Because you gotta be careful, I mean, obviously, your understanding of you gotta be careful, you don't wanna, you know, penalize somebody, but you're trying, I mean, if there's a way to help you, we also wanna do that, so, yeah.
I think there's a time limit as far as cars not moving, being parked on the side street.
That's what I thought.
After so many days, you have to move.
24, is that what you're nodding? But it's not posted, right?
It's not posted.
But it's,
It's a city ordinance.
but even though it's a city
Now,
ordinance.
see, now I was told today on the phone that if it's not posted, then the ordinance doesn't apply.
There are none of them posted.
Oh, well,
It's a
then that,
24-hour rule, you have to move a car every 24 hours or a trailer.
If it's on the street.
Yep.
Right, and then whether it be a foot, 5 feet, it has to.
right, I mean, yeah. Okay, well, that's good, because I was told today it had to be posted in order to be enforced.
Well, and typically with those types, it's usually, unless there's a complaint, we obviously, you know, the officers don't have time to go out and mark every tire on every car, but if you have we have a complaint, is that something?
So it would
We
be
can
due
look
to.
into it first thing in the morning.
Oh, that would be
Okay,
wonderful.
well, we will start there, and
Okay.
we'll see what we can do for you, okay?
Thank you very, very much.
You're very
I
welcome,
appreciate it.
thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
All right. And you all are more than welcome to stay for the whole thing. You're not rude.
I'm gonna say we're not rude by leaving, no. Okay. I don't wanna come in here and complain about someone being rude and be rude. Okay.
We will not be offended, so.
Okay, thank you.
All right, you have a
No
good
offense
evening.
intended.
All right, is there anyone else who would like to speak tonight? Seeing no one, I will close public participation and move on to the approval of minutes. First tonight, we have the minutes from the regular meeting of January 15th, 2018.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion from Alderman Turner and a second from Alderman Dickerson. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Moving on to our agenda items. First tonight, we have 2 special event permits for summer activities, square activities. We have Junk in the Trunk and Farmers Market tonight.
Apologize, I got these on Friday, and I was supposed to leave them at the Diaz tonight. So there's one for each event.
Well, the guy that had them might have dropped them off Thursday, so no complaints.
They were dropped off Thursday, I was
Yes.
in Jefferson City on Thursday. So I got them Friday, got them done, but I was supposed to drop them at the Diaz this afternoon. After Cheryl and I talked about that, and the drain in the garage had better things for me to do this afternoon, so I got to.
Well, these are pretty standard. I don't think anything has changed, if I recall.
I don't even recall which one was first. Do you want to do?
Well, we can do the Farmers Market first if you like. They just blocked the, what's that?
This side said farmer's
Yep.
market, this side said junk in the trunk.
Well, I'm in charge, so I'm saying Farmers Market.
Okay. So, Junk in the Trunk, they have a request to do Junk in the Trunk the second Saturday of every month from May through October, blocking the square about 4 p.m. It should be done around 7 p.m. They are going to have the street department drop off all of the needed equipment to block the street, and then the applicant will be responsible for setting it up and then tearing it down when it's over. We've had this for several years, had no problems or complaints. I think a couple of years ago we had a guy complain that we're blocking off the square too much, but I haven't heard from him in a couple of years, so our recommendation is for approval. We've had no problems or complaints.
Any questions?
Move to approve.
I have a motion from Alderman Milner and a second from Alderman Long for approval. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And been approved. Farmers Market.
Farmers Market, same thing. This has been going on for many, many years. They are requesting each Saturday from June through October. I know the application says September, but after discussion, we had a kind of a weird summer a couple years ago, and they went through October, so we just wanted to add that so that they didn't have to come back. So they're asking for May through October, starting at 7 a.m. Business will start at 8, should be done around noon. Again, they will be responsible for setting up the barricades and taking them down. This event does not shut down the square. They just take the inside of the square and let vehicle traffic go through the squares. They just put up speed limit signs. So, no problems with this event. Again, I think it was the same guy complained a couple years ago, but no recent complaints. We recommend approval. Entertain any questions.
Any questions tonight? None? Make a motion.
Second.
Motion from Alderman Long, second from Alderman Miller. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And events approved. Want to thank Van and Blake are here this evening for keeping this going. They work very hard and are the driving force, especially behind the farmers market. So thank you both, and they do a wonderful job. So. All right. Next item, destruction of records.
Good evening. These are just daily log sheets at our water plant. The water plant opened in approximately 1971, and they felt no need to ever get rid of their daily logs. So we're requesting to get rid of everything between 1971 and 2004. There's two different pieces of other governments saying what you gotta keep. One says 10 years, one says 12. We're keeping the last 13 years, so.
We're covered, huh?
Yeah, none of this stuff has any private information on it. It'll just be disposed of either in a recycling or a dumpster.
Any questions?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motions from Alderman Dickerson and a second from Alderman Levison. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we can destroy the records then. Council Bill 07.
Council Bill 07, a resolution of the Board of Aldermen of the City of Harrisonville, Missouri, to authorize the city administrator to execute a purchase agreement for one 2018 Ford F-450 pickup truck for the CWSS department with Blue Spring Ford in an amount of $34,500.
Again, this is just one of our trucks we use. This actually pulls our Bobcat. Years past, these have always been diesels. The price of a diesel motor being what it is, and the fact that we're just in town, we don't need all the power. We're saving the extra $8,000 and just going with a gas motor. The existing bed we thought about replacing. So you check the price of one, they're about 20 grand. For a little less than 2,000, we can get Knapheide to refit it to fit the new body. So that will come in at a separate, it's not part of this 34.5.
Okay.
So
How much is the other bed? What did you say?
about 20 grand
Just for the bid.
just for the bed.
That's something we're getting.
No,
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 it's
we're
gonna
gonna
be
the old-
retrofit the
Oh,
existing
okay, we're
one.
gonna take the old bed off. Gotcha.
And the question was raised, and I want to make sure this was clarified about, somebody asked if there were bids for this. Mr. Welch, you can probably explain it better than I can, but I'll let you.
So when we do bids, you're supposed to go out for bids from everybody, sealed bids, receive them, and then open them up. We can go through the state procurement process, which this is through MoDOT. So it's already gone through that closed bid process. So we have to take whatever is submitted for them in this bid. They're the ones that have already done all the processing of it, and this is the low bid. So that's why we are picking this company to do it. I know in the past, it's been taken elsewhere and asked if they can beat the bid, but that's not the way you're supposed to do closed bids.
True in a sense. All bids are due at a certain specific time. So normally, if you didn't take a low bid, it was because there were other factors involved, usually in the bid process, as far as you're going to have to be taking your vehicles to Blue Springs to have warranty work done on them?
No, the issue was we only went to one place for bid. We didn't send that, we didn't put out, we have to put out for
State bids.
anybody to come and bid on it,
Right,
right?
So
it
if
was
we,
always a state bid.
if we don't want to accept the state bid, then we can go out for bids. And we can include anybody you want, but we would go with, all the local companies to do that. Whereas MoDOT goes out, they've already done all that processing, so we accept what their low bid is. That's how you can do.
And if we do, we have to open it up to everybody. In the past, we shopped out our local
Yeah,
dealer,
that's what I thought.
but to be honest, they were always $300 to $500 more expensive than the state bid, which was good because we were supporting local business. But now if we have to put it out for bid, nothing says our local vendor is gonna be the cheapest. We may be spending another $300 to $400 somewhere else in the state.
Yeah,
That was my question, too.
yeah.
I know
Well,
we used to do
because,
it that way.
well, Columbia used to always win the bid,
Yeah.
but then you had to send drivers to go pick them up and take them back and get your warranty work done there, and so.
They should still be
in the
able to
long
get their
run,
warranty work done.
you can.
Well, some of them, I think like the patrol cars and stuff, St. Louis was the area to go, and so you had to drive across, and so there was more.
There was
Blue
more
Springs
expense in it.
is not very far, so it's gonna be difficult to, I mean, not that
So
I'm
if we
against
wanted
using
to- If we
local.
wanted to do local, then we'd have to
But-
do our own bidding process through so many Ford dealerships.
Right.
And Lewisburg Ford or Lee Summit, anybody.
And you're not guaranteed to get your local dealer.
Right, because they don't know, what the price will be, so, yeah.
Things change.
All right,
You ready?
yep, this is an ordinance, or no, it's a resolution, so we don't need
Oh,
a second reading, so.
I make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Alderman Dickerson and a second from Alderman Long. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And Council Bill 07 becomes Resolution 06. Council Bill 08.
Council Bill 08, a resolution of the Board of Aldermen of the City of Harrisonville, Missouri, to authorize the city administrator to execute a purchase agreement for 3 2018 Ford F-250 pickup trucks for the CWSS and electrical departments with Blue Springs Ford in an amount of $30,000 per truck for a total price of $90,000.
Two of these trucks go to the water sewer department. One of them replaces a 2006 three-quarter ton four-door Chevy. These are all three extended cab, so there's no fourth doors. It just gives them a little extra room to put things like paint, things like that freeze, and we don't want them to explode in the back of the truck. One of them goes to the water plant. Originally, we had talked about getting them a half-ton truck. By the time you price them out, there is less than $900 difference between a half-ton and a three-quarter ton. Three-quarter ton will stand up longer, and it will have better resale when we get rid of it. Plus, it just made it easy ordering 3 trucks identical. The third truck goes to the electric department, and that is the electric supervisor's truck. And his truck will get rolled down.
Okay. All right, any questions?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion from Alderman Dickerson and a second from Alderman Levison. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And Council Bill 08 becomes Resolution R07.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council Bill 09.
Council Bill 09, a resolution authorizing the city administrator to execute a commercial real estate contract with County Square Investment LLC to purchase the vacant lot at the northwest corner of Lexington Street and Pearl Street at a cost of $25,000.
So we've discussed this about purchasing that lot. First thought is because it's already paved, easy access to get it as a parking lot. But the mayor and I have already been talking, we've got some other ideas for it as well that can be used during festivals. So it's not just a parking lot, and then if possibly in the future, we have somebody come in and say they need that corner lot, they'd like to do something that we think is really cool for the downtown square, then we can maybe sell it at that point. And we'd have some control as to what can be done. We can have them sign an agreement. So I just see this as a positive for the city to purchase this lot at a price that's less than appraisal.
Great. Any questions?
Mr. Mayor, I just have a question of Mr. Welch.
Mhm.
I remember when we were talking about this in closed session, we had talked about the fact that we had just gotten that settlement from Tract Phone,
Yep.
which was 23,000 and change, and that would be a good source of revenue for us to utilize to purchase this. Is that what we're gonna do, or where are we gonna use the funds?
That money is already in the general fund, but yes, that would be how we looked at approaching it when we were talking about it. It's like we have some money set aside to be able to do
Perfect,
that.
that's what I wanted.
Especially since we did the budget, I mean, we need to know that we have funds, so yeah, agreed. So,
We'll end up doing a budget amendment, and that'll be shown.
all right, any other questions?
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion from Alderman Dickerson and a second from Alderman Miller. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Council Bill 09 becomes Resolution R08. Council Bill 10.
Council Bill 10, first reading, an ordinance of the City of Harrisonville, Missouri to amend the Code of Ordinances, Section 355.010, stopping, standing, or parking prohibited, Section A3, by adding a new Section A3C, regulating parking in front of a centralized mail delivery installation, and establishing an effective date.
It's pretty much self-explanatory. We've got these mailboxes, the cluster boxes in neighborhoods, and we have one in particular on Blueberry that somebody likes to park in front of. If there is a vehicle in front of it, the post office will not stop, they will not deliver the mail, and I don't think they even make it available at the post office. So, we felt that the way to resolve this is we set up a no parking zone around the cluster boxes, 15 feet either side. Vehicles should be able to, the post office vehicles should be able to pull in, pull out. We probably won't care about it on Sunday because there isn't any mail delivery, but I mean, that would be an issue for that time. But I think this is something that we can resolve a problem in the neighborhood.
I always just thought it was a federal thing, you couldn't find it.
Well,
It is, I thought we don't have a
yeah.
law, we can't write
We
it
can't enforce
because
it.
it's
I
not
see.
ours.
Yeah, I went through those steps with the gentleman on the phone, and he thought the same thing, and the post office is like, well, no, we don't have anything, and then they called the police department, they said, well, we don't have a local ordinance to enforce, so that's what brought this up, and I told him, I said, well, I think I know an easy fix for you. I said, we'll just make no parking.
Yeah, I'd like to bring up one thing that, about this ordinance, is on the word standing, in that.
That's your car parked with you bought it, correct?
What?
The,
You're
What
talking about
standing
the-
is?
stopping, standing, or
title?
parking is your car parked and you're standing by it, correct?
No,
That's the.
Standing vehicle.
okay.
I was just gonna say that references just to that section.
Right.
This is not regulating standing, it's just regulating parking.
Well, the reason why I'm saying that is because if somebody wants, because I have one of those boxes, and when I drive up there with my car, I stop the car right beside the box. I get out and get in my key, get back in the car and leave. And a lot of other people down there will come the opposite direction, and it's because it's on their driver's side to get out. And I understand that, no parking, I have no problem about that, but I wouldn't like for them to be able to give you a ticket for parking there for a few minutes to get your mail,
I think-
because there's nowhere else to park.
I think what he's saying is in here, it's referencing that section, the section of the ordinance is called stopping, standing, or parking, referencing, we're adding this to that ordinance, am I correct in the way? It's not saying that we're not adding the standing is not legal, in the way I understand what you explained.
Typically, I think what the alderman's suggesting is not really parking.
No.
You know, you're pausing, you
Yeah.
know,
I thought
temporarily.
you called it standing when you're, get out of
But,
your car.
but I can't imagine, and I think it's up to the police department to be reasonable in this. I think if you pull up, it's just like at the airport, you don't have a right to park at the curb, but you can pull up and drop somebody off and then pull away. You're not allowed, they consider parking, and I think most jurisdictions do, where you've actually stopped, get out, leave the vehicle there for a period of time, even for a few minutes, that's parking. But if you're just getting out to service the box,
Then
I don't see that in violation of this ordinance.
Well,
What is standing?
Yeah, that's what's the definition
Yeah,
of standing?
what's the definition of standing?
John, what do you all?
Standing to us, if you refer back to when you get the high school ordinance, people were pulling up and sitting there in an occupied running vehicle. That's what we consider standing.
these people obviously wouldn't just be sitting there, they'd probably pull up, get out of their car, run around. And the point I would think of is,
That's gonna be officer discretion.
I was
Well,
gonna
the
say,
thing is
does
you're
it
not-
have to be in there?
you're not going to go up there if the mail's not there, because obviously you're stopping the people that have a key to the mailbox. It's not like, you know, somebody that doesn't live there is going to be over at the mailbox. And if you're blocking the way and the mail truck's coming to deliver the mail, you're obviously going to get out of the way so they can deliver your mail, so I don't.
I guess the only thing I'm thinking of, and thinking of my parents, let's say they didn't get the mail the day before, and they pull up there, and they sit
They sit
there,
there
and
for a
they're reading their
minute.
mail, thinking that today's mail's already there, and it hasn't come yet,
Mhm.
so they're sitting there, and then they are blocking the
That's
way. That
my-
was the only thing I
Yeah,
was
well,
thinking,
well, that's my
standing.
interpretation of standing, is
Yes.
you're just there for a few seconds to getting your stuff together before you go out.
The other thing I would think on this would be kind of like what these people were speaking of. I don't imagine our officers are gonna be driving around looking for people. I mean, if they see a car parked there unattended, they may very well stop and issue a ticket, but again, this was we were looking for a remedy to
Oh, and I
to
agree.
the situation, and I don't think, you know, if, you know, maybe you have somebody that, well, god dang it, every day they pull up there and sit there and wait. Well, the issue with blocking the mailbox wasn't that the person couldn't get to the
Right.
mailbox,
Yeah.
it's they weren't getting their mail, so, I just don't see there being, I mean, I'm not saying we should have it in there, I'm just saying, I don't see
Yeah.
that being an issue, I don't see anybody complaining.
Well, and I was gonna say that the wording, that is just a title of that section. There's multiple sections underneath, and we've added a new one that specifically talks about parking in front of a centralized mail delivery unit. So it doesn't address standing at
Okay.
all. It just happens to be the section 355.010, it just happens to be the name of that section. Below it are several additional
So
sections.
what we are creating is an ordinance that they can enforce, that you cannot have the car parked in front of the mailbox.
Yes.
Okay.
Is that how you see it, John?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, the example Alderman Miller gave, if her parents are out there, we're not gonna write them a ticket, we're gonna try and move them along. What the US Postal Office does,
They
I
just
can't
drive by.
control that.
Yeah.
You know, they'll probably just drive on by.
Mhm.
I think what we're trying to get here is to get them to where they don't park for
Mhm.
hours at a time in front of a delivery box.
Yep.
We had this problem right before Christmas, and it's in some Christmas stores because they didn't deliver the mail, cars parked there. They drove on by.
I don't blame them.
That's it.
I'd like to make a motion that we suspend the rule
No,
in all this ordinance
Mhm.
and move it forward.
Okay, I have a motion from Alderman Dixon to suspend the ruling and move Council Bill 10 to the second reading.
Second.
Second from Alderman Milner. Any further discussion? I'll need a roll call, please, on that.
Alderman Bockelman, Alderman Dickerson,
Aye.
Alderman Milner,
Aye.
Alderman Turner,
aye,
Alderman Long,
Aye.
Alderman Bowman,
Aye.
Alderman Levison,
Aye.
Alderman Reese.
Aye.
All right, second reading, please.
Second reading, Council Bill 10. An ordinance of the City of Harrisonville, Missouri to amend the Code of Ordinances, Section 355.010, stopping, standing, or parking prohibited, Section A3, by adding a new Section A3C, regulating parking in front of a centralized mail delivery installation and establishing an effective date.
All right, roll call again, please.
Alderman Dickerson,
Aye.
Alderman Levison,
Aye.
Alderman Reese,
Aye.
Alderman Long,
Aye.
Alderman Bowman,
Aye.
Alderman Milner,
Aye.
Alderman Bockelman, Alderman Turner.
aye,
All right, and Council Bill 10 becomes ordinance 03427. Council Bill 11.
Council Bill 11, an ordinance amending, first reading, an ordinance amending Section 500.080 amendments to Chapter 500 Building and Property Maintenance Code, adding an exception to the supplemental electrode, on a temporary service installation and establishing an effective date.
So temporary service for construction sites is, it's on a pole, it has a meter, has the panel, GFIs, and then it runs a ground rod into the ground. The 2012 IRC, which is part of the NEC, or is written on the basis of the NEC, requires that you have two supplemental grounds. So you have the single ground rod, and then you should have a second one 6 feet away. And that's how our building official has looked at it. Our electric department, however, believes that a single ground rod is sufficient. So I told them, I said, if that's how you want that to be interpreted by the building department, then we need to rewrite that section. And this is just for residential electric, not for commercial. So when you see it on a job site at homes, it would just be the single electrode in the ground. So that's the change that we're looking at to make it, to approve that, so that our building department, if they do the inspection, will approve something along those lines.
Questions?
So we're saying then that the building official is more, his opinion is more valuable, he's more well-versed in this matter than the electrical people?
His opinion, from what I've read in the IRC and the NEC, is that it requires the two supplemental grounds.
Right. And what do other communities do?
Single ground rods. It's been a standard for a long time, the single ground rods. I believe it may have been 2012, in fact, when the secondary ground rod, or the 2009 NEC, when that became a requirement, especially for homes. When you think of permanent installations, it's always two, you have to. But for temporary setup, it was always just a single ground rod.
All right. Any other questions?
I'd like to
I
suspend
would
the
make we suspend the rule.
Yeah, okay. Go
So
ahead.
you gonna second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, I got a motion from Alderman Turner and a second from Alderman Dickerson to suspend the ruling and move Council Bill 11 to a second reading. Any further discussion? I'll need a roll call again.
Alderman Reese.
Aye.
Alderman Long.
Aye.
Alderman Levison.
Aye.
Alderman Dickerson.
Aye.
Alderman Bockelman.
Aye.
Alderman Bowman.
Aye.
Alderman Milner.
Aye.
Alderman Turner.
Aye.
All right, second reading, please.
Second reading, Council Bill 11, an ordinance amending Section 500.080 amendments to Chapter 500 Building and Property Maintenance Codes, adding an exception to the supplemental electrode on a temporary service installation and establishing an effective date.
All right, roll call again, please.
Alderman Dickerson.
Aye.
Alderman Reese.
Aye.
Alderman Levison.
Aye.
Alderman Long.
Aye.
Alderman Bowman.
Aye.
Alderman Milner.
Aye.
Alderman Turner.
Aye.
Alderman Bockelman.
Aye.
And Council Bill 11 will become ordinance 03428. Council Bill 12.
Council Bill 12, first reading, an ordinance repealing sections 500.080 amendments, 8.6, 8.9, 8.16, 8.17, 8.18, and 8.19 of Chapter 500 Building and Property Maintenance Codes of the Harrisonville Code of Ordinances, and enacting in lieu thereof new sections 500.080 amendments, 8.6, 8.9, and 8.16, reserving section 500.080 amendments 8.17, 8.18, and 8.19 for future amendments, and establishing an effective date.
I'm so sorry for that one.
What is this?
We should have done that in April.
Yeah, okay. So this amends two things. One, we have already amended on the commercial side, the temporary certificate of occupancy. That the building official can renew that at his discretion at a certain cost. What we're doing here is putting it in the residential part of the ordinances of the code, so that he can, at his discretion, whether to extend a temporary certificate of occupancy at a certain cost, that being $200 each time, up to a maximum of 3. So we don't charge for the first one, but we charge thereafter. Right, that's one of them. The other part of this is we have established a minimum requirement for foundation walls, which is on a foundation wall for a home, you put in rebar 48 inches on center. So from any wall, you start in the center and count 48 inches over, and you're putting rebar all through there. Instead of, what we have in there now is that you go and look in the old code and try to find what you're supposed to do. And this is a 2000 code. So we would have to go in the basement, find an old 2000 code, bring it up for somebody to say, here's what you need to do. What we're doing here is trying to say, we're using the current code, but here's your minimum. And this will establish something easy for the contractors to know. So the foundation guys, they know exactly what they need to put in minimum code. But there's just so much that was rewritten to put that in the old way. We're just having removed so much stuff.
What was the old code? What were the requirements?
It depended on the type of soil condition, which it still does depend on that, type of soil condition, or the amount of backfill that you're gonna put against a wall. If you're gonna have an 8-foot wall or a 9-foot wall, it depends on the type of framing that you would also do. I mean, there's a number of issues that you have to look at. So you still have to look at how much when you have the dirt on the outside and you have a basement on the inside, you've got all of that unbalanced fill that can push in. So you wanna make sure that wall's as strong as possible. So what type of material is that that's pushing against the house? Does it drain or does it not drain? Is there gonna be a lot of hydrostatic pressure from rain? That's the kind of stuff you worry about. Here it says, your minimum is, you're gonna have all this reinforcement to begin with, but it's a small amount. It's not a whole lot. Most of the code requires that anyway, unless it is the rockiest soil you've ever seen and it drains away very quickly. Otherwise, we don't have that. We've got clay, and that's, you know, a real heavy soil. So this will just require that minimum. Otherwise, you have to maybe go 12 inches on center or 24 inches on center. It just depends on all those variables that I'm talking about. Kind of not the easiest.
I guess my only concern is we want to make sure we're not lessening something that shouldn't be lessened.
Now, I think we actually are standardizing it and then keeping what's current. And that's a lot of the issues is, you know, are we taking away, are we adding to? We're actually amending it so it is what we currently require, easy to find, staff can find it, tell the contractor what they need to do. But we set up a minimum that's really easy to follow.
As long as it still keeps everything structurally sound.
Because probably 10 years ago, 12 years ago, we didn't put any rebar in a concrete wall vertically. You always put it just 2 on top, 2 on the bottom horizontally.
Might add that there was also, you've got the 2012 code that conflicts with a state statute. So that's one of the changes that you have a whole series of amendments, and rather than trying to break this down into 6 or 7 different ordinances, since they're all in the amendments section, I think it was valid to go ahead and do this by one ordinance, because they're essentially trying to address the same issues within the code and how that code is. But one of those issues was that the state statute follows the 2006 code, and when you approved the 2012 code, you created conflict. So one of the sections, that's corrected in here as well, just as a FYI.
Okay, so let's go back to the first thing you talked about.
Temporary certificate of
Correct.
occupancy? Okay.
Because last week I heard about, somebody did their building, followed what their guidelines, what they were supposed to, came out for their inspection. Oh, no, wait, you need to go do this and this and this and this and this. Well, you didn't tell me that the first time. Well, I'm telling you now. So is that gonna be where this is going to cost them now more money because we're adding to, or we didn't do our job the first time and tell people exactly what they had to have? That's my only fear.
That's a separate issue. You should have found the issues on the first pass. We're not changing anything that's gonna require them to go back out and make that change at this point, no.
This is basically, if I remember correctly, they get the temporary occupancy permit, say it's wintertime and it calls for them to have grass or something, well, then we're not gonna make them put sod down in the middle of the wintertime. I mean, I don't know on a house if it would be required, but just a good example. And so they would have a temporary occupancy permit, and if they don't put the grass in, say in the spring or summer, and they still want to extend that, then they could, but they'd have to pay $200 at that point. That's, I mean, you don't want to charge them $200 on the first round, because there's probably a very good reason why they need it, and there's just something missing to the final product, so.
We are not gonna go back and look at everything again. If we write up a temporary certificate, it's gonna be these items, and those are the items that we go back and re-inspect.
No, this was, I wish I could remember exactly who it was I was talking to. This was something that they were given their guidelines, here's your guidelines, go build, okay, come out, inspect. Well, now you have to do this, 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 and this. So it was kind of an afterthought of, oh, I didn't tell you this to begin with, but now I'm gonna tell you now. So no, you can't have your temporary, you gotta go do this. That's what I wanna make sure we're not going to do. If we didn't provide all the information to begin with, I don't wanna find somebody, you know, after they think they're where they need to be.
No, and that's, I mean, to be honest, that's kind of how it used to be.
Well, I think it's still happening.
I got that a lot, and that's what we're trying to get away from, so no, that's not the point of this. If
No, I
that's
know.
hap-
That's what I wanna
If
make
that's
sure.
happening, that's a separate issue, and we need to
Correct.
be sure that
That
Mr.
we
Welch
find
is
out.
knowing, so we
Okay.
can follow up on those things,
Yeah.
but no,
Okay.
we are definitely not trying to do that. We're trying
That's
to
what I
make
wanna
it
make sure.
easier for when they come here. It's just, it's kind of like a chain we made to
Yes.
BZA. We're trying to make it easier for when you come in here, you're in and out much faster,
Yes.
less
Okay.
hectic, so no, we're not trying to make it more difficult, by no means, so. Any other questions?
I don't remember who it was. Okay.
Any other questions?
I move that we move this ordinance to a second reading.
Okay, a motion from Alderman Dixon to suspend the ruling and move Council Bill 1-2 to a second reading. Do I have a second? Second. Second from Alderman Long. Any further discussion? Need a roll call, please?
Alderman Reese.
Aye.
Alderman Bockelman.
Aye.
Alderman Bowman.
Aye.
Alderman Long.
Aye.
Alderman Dickerson.
Aye.
Alderman Milner.
Aye.
Alderman Levison. Alderman Turner.
Aye.
All right, second reading, please.
Second reading, Council Bill 12, an ordinance repealing sections 500.080 amendments 8.6, 8.9, 8.16, 8.17, 8.18, and 8.19 of Chapter 500 Building and Property Maintenance Codes of the Harrisonville Code of Ordinances, and enacting in lieu thereof new sections 500.080 amendments 8.6, 8.9, and 8.16, reserving sections 500.080 amendments 8.17, 8.18, and 8.19 for future amendments, and establishing an effective date.
All right, need a roll call again, please?
Alderman Milner.
Aye.
Alderman Reese.
Aye.
Alderman Levison.
Aye.
Alderman Dickerson.
Aye.
Alderman Long.
Aye.
Alderman Turner.
Aye.
Alderman Bockelman.
Aye.
Alderman Bowman.
Aye.
All right, and Council Bill 1-2 will become ordinance 03429. Council Bill 1-3.
Council Bill 13, an ordinance amending Chapter 250, noise of the Harrisonville Code of Ordinances with respect to regulations when there are extreme temperatures by repealing Section 250.020A.9 and enacting in lieu thereof a new Section 250.020A.9 and establishing an effective date.
It was brought to us to consider, and we took it to committee to have them look at changing it where if the temperature is 95 degrees or higher, to allow contractors to be able to start at 6 a.m. instead of 7 a.m. Most of the time, they'll wrap it up by 2 or 3 because of the heat. So committee agreed, and we've brought this to the board to approve allowing the 95 degree 6 a.m. start time.
Any questions?
I make a motion to move to the second reading.
Motion from Alderman Turner to suspend the ruling on Council Bill 1-3 and move to a second reading. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Alderman Dickerson. Any further discussion? Need a roll call again?
Alderman Bockelman.
Aye.
Alderman Dickerson.
Aye.
Alderman Levison.
Aye.
Alderman Reese.
Aye.
Alderman Long.
Aye.
Alderman Turner.
Aye.
Alderman Milner.
Aye.
Alderman Bowman.
Aye.
All right, second reading, please.
Second reading, Council Bill 13, an ordinance amending Chapter 250, noise of the Harrisonville Code of Ordinances with respect to regulations when there are extreme temperatures by repealing Section 250.020A.9 and enacting in lieu thereof a new Section 250.020A.9 and establishing an effective date.
Roll call, please.
Alderman Turner.
Aye.
Alderman Long.
Aye.
Alderman Bowman.
Aye.
Alderman Dickerson.
Aye.
Alderman Reese.
Aye.
Alderman Milner.
Aye.
Alderman Bockelman.
Aye.
Alderman Levison.
Aye.
All right, and Council Bill 1-3 becomes ordinance 03430. Council Bill 1-4.
First reading, Council Bill 14, an ordinance of the Board of Aldermen of Harrisonville, Missouri, repealing Section 220.290 of the City Code and enacting in lieu thereof a new Section 220.290, dead, dying, diseased trees.
Our building official, Chris Arthur, was reading through our dead tree ordinance and felt that it put us in a liable situation, that if you have neighbors that were upset with each other, the neighbor could then point to the other neighbor and say, well, there are trees dying, needs to be torn down. So that would require that we would have to send letters and do abatement, and it would end up costing us money in the future. He felt that that was not where the city should be, that the city should take care of what's in the right-of-ways, along easements, power lines, and that. But what most jurisdictions do for dead or dying trees is the neighbor sends a certified letter to the person with the dead tree to say, this thing is gonna fall on my house, you're liable if it does. That's all you have to do. And that has apparently worked in the past. So that's kind of what we were looking at with this, was removing that. We added language through Attorney Fairfield to make sure that we had access and could get rid of trees that are in the easements, especially along electric lines. We'll take care of trees in the right of way, we always have. But this gets us out of that issue between neighbors.
Okay, any further questions?
I'd like to suspend the rule and move this to a second reading.
All right, I have a motion from Alderman Dickerson to suspend the ruling and move Council Bill 14 to a second reading. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Alderman Reese. Any further discussion? I need a roll call vote, please.
Alderman Levison.
Aye.
Alderman Turner.
Aye.
Alderman Milner.
Aye.
Alderman Dickerson.
Aye.
Alderman Long.
Aye.
Alderman Reese.
Aye.
Alderman Bockelman.
Aye.
Alderman Bowman.
Aye.
All right, second reading, please.
Second reading, Council Bill 14, an ordinance of the Board of Aldermen of Harrisonville, Missouri, repealing Section 220.290 of the City Code and enacting in lieu thereof a new Section 220.290, dead, dying, diseased trees.
All right, roll call again, please.
Alderman Dickerson.
Aye.
Alderman Levison.
Aye.
Alderman Reese.
Aye.
Alderman Long.
Aye.
Alderman Bowman.
Aye.
Alderman Milner.
Aye.
Alderman Turner.
Aye.
Alderman Bockelman.
Aye.
And Council Bill 14 will become ordinance 03431. That's it for our agenda items tonight. Alderman committee reports. Alderman Bowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to publicly extend condolences to the family, friends, and associates of Pat Thomas. I think we lost a man too quickly, a man who was too young, a man who had impact on our community. And I think it causes all of us to pause and just remember how precious life is and how quickly it can be taken away. So that includes you, Dennis. My condolences to you and to the family and friends and other associates of Mr. Thomas. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Alderman Bachman, welcome back tonight. All right. Alderman Reese.
Yes. I received a, sorry,
Can you use your microphone? So-
yes.
All right.
I received a letter from a constituent about the trash service. And I had actually talked to her before this, and she had asked me about leaves in this time of the year. And I told her that it was my understanding that in order to get yard service in February, you had to call them and they would come pick them up. And so that's what she did. And apparently it was not well received, and I have a rather long letter from her explaining what had happened. And so apparently they did go ahead and say that they would pick them up, and they did. They were not happy about it. They told her that they did not have a truck that went running around town picking up leaves in February because 99% of people already had their leaves picked up. Anyway, it went on. So I thought, I had some leaves myself that needed to be picked up, so I thought I'd go ahead and give them a call and give them a chance to at least see if that was really the case. And so I did, and yeah, that was really the case. the gentleman I talked to, his name was Brian, by the way, I just threw that in. Anyway, he said that he made it very clear, in fact, I recorded it. He said that that they would pick it up as a personal favor, that it was a personal favor. And the conversation went on, and like I said, you have that recorded if anybody really wants to hear it. So I went back and I listened to, and I can't remember the gentleman's name that owns the company.
Brian Moore.
Brian Moore. Oh, I was really
Probably who you
talking.
spoke to.
That's who I was talking to, okay. Well, at any rate, I went back and because I thought maybe I misunderstood, and certainly I could have, but that's not the case. He was very explicit about saying that he would pick them up, he would do whatever he needed to do. He went on to say in that conversation that it didn't matter how many, he said if they have, and I quote this one, if they have as many as 210 bags of leaves, we'll get them. So it's a little awkward to me to tell my constituents that they should call in order to get their yard waste picked up and then have them be treated in this fashion. So I don't know if we can, talk to them about it or what we can do, but that's been my experience, and I do have the recording if anybody wants to listen to it.
I'd say probably a call from Happy would be,
Do we have to sign once a month during the winter?
no, it was the,
He said if they would call, he would,
Okay.
I remember, I wasn't on the board, but I would hear that. I mean, he was very clear, and I remember just as a realtor thinking, can we put that in the contract? Because if it's not in there, but I also thought it's on tape.
well, I think in that one, he thought it's probably going to be very odd that you'll have somebody pick it up. I mean, you bring it up, I mean, I noticed outside my house, I have, it's the collection point at my back door, is where the wind blows it all. I probably have enough for one bag, and thought, well, if my bag goes up, what I'm gonna do? Well, I'm probably just gonna stick it in the garage and not worry about it, but I have a garage to put them in with space. I know everybody doesn't have space to store bags, so, yeah, I think just to follow Mr. Welch on, I mean, that was the understanding, was on the odd occasion that somebody does have it,
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, if you listen to this, you'll find that he was really very rude.
Mhm.
And I mean, I could take it, I'm a big girl.
He was rude to you?
Yes, he
Oh,
was.
he was.
Yeah.
Brian was?
He was a lot nicer when he figured out that I was a councilman.
Change things, huh? Mr. Wells, could you please give Mr. Moore a call and ask him to, we have our version of what was said on tape. I mean, it's on the video, you can't get around it. It's, we have it on video.
It is what it is.
That's right. So, all right.
He did, by the way, pick up my leaves.
Well, that's good. That's good.
And you got your roof done.
Well, it's half done.
Half done.
It's half done.
All right. Anything further?
No, thank you.
All right. Alderman Miller?
I was just noticing a letter we got from the Healthcare Foundation of Greater Kansas City, and I was fortunate enough to sit on that board for about 5 years, for Harrisonville, years ago. And they do great work. If you don't know what that is, you need to do a little bit of research, because they do some amazing things for our community that nobody knows. We did Bright Futures did a dental hygiene drive during the Pleasant Hill Harrisonville game last Friday night, because it was both boys and girls. And it was also a play out at the same time. And I contacted Pleasant Hill and, let them know, and they let their community know, and we got a lot of stuff. We got about 3 big barrels full of stuff that people brought into the ball games that night. So, which will all go to the Cass County Dental Clinic, which does service both Pleasant Hill and Harrisonville. So, like I said, if you don't know something about the Healthcare Foundation, you need to do a little bit of research on them. They poured, about $5 million into Cass County over the last 10, 15 years for our people, so.
Very good. That it?
That's it,
All right.
that's all I got.
Alderman Dixon?
Nothing.
Alderman Long? Alderman Turner?
This Thursday, the band's having their fundraiser, the chili dinner, starts at 6 at the middle school. So come support the band and listen to all of them from 6th grade all the way up to the high school and jazz bands.
That'll be pretty interesting.
Alderman Leeson.
Saturday's Harrisonville Show Choir Invitational. Everybody's invited out. It's pretty much be an all-day thing. Should be good. I think it's $10 a person. If you're a senior, you get a discount bonus. I can't remember exactly what they're charging, but yeah, it should be good. It'll be fun times.
All right, very good. Mr. Welch?
I won't bore you with anything, just let you know that we are getting ready for the next snow that's supposed to come through tomorrow night.
Who knows what it will be?
Could be nothing and it could be 20.
It might be another dusty.
Yeah. Right, that was one heck of a dusting, that's for sure. I saw on your report, I noticed, I don't know if anybody else had noticed down on Mechanic that the old flower shop there, there's been cleanup down there. He's not here this evening. I was going to thank him publicly. I'll still thank him publicly because there's a video. Mr. Foster has taken the initiative to clean up the ditch down there. I thought it was fantastic to see somebody maybe set an example others will follow to try to get some of those cleaned up. I know it looks a lot nicer. You can't miss it when you drive by there, but
You can see all the way through to the.
yeah, so hopefully that starts a trend and more people will try to do some cleanup, which leads kind of into my next thing. I'll remind everybody that February 15th at 7 p.m. at the Community Center, there's a meeting. The Army Corps of Engineers will be there to talk about flood relief and what is there,
So it'll be on the floodplain, flood risk, and the Corps of Engineers.
what is their group called? It's
There's SEMA,
the Silver Jackets, that's the name of it. Well, thank you. Yeah, so, I've seen some comments, and Alderman Bowman had shared it out there, a few people commenting saying they don't think that this will be any different, it'll be a waste of their time. I beg to differ. This is in response to our last meeting, and we are trying to find ways to assist people. This is one of the ways we are trying to help people. This is not we're just gonna open the floor and listen to complaints. We've listened to people's complaints and what they had trouble with, and we're now trying to address those, and that's what this meeting is about. This meeting is about taking a step in addressing their concerns. So I encourage anybody who had issues to try to be at that meeting, and maybe you'll learn something.
When was that,
It's February 15th. It's a Thursday at 7 p.m. at the Community Center.
Brian? How are we getting that information out to?
I know it's out on our Facebook page.
on the Facebook page, it was
On the
in the newsletter, we'll put it on Facebook again, it's on the website.
Can
So
we do
Sharon-
this city email like we have for the, because like I get a city email every time there's an open position. Is there any way we can,
I mean, if there's if we have yeah. Mhm.
because that would probably be helpful. Because I think people are more likely to see that versus getting on Facebook or,
No, it's another avenue. I think you
Yeah.
use all of it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's all, yeah.
that way they can't go, I didn't know,
Agreed.
It's a little colder, I'd go knock on doors.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I agree with that.
Mr. Mayor, it might not be a bad idea. I was just thinking while Councilwoman Levison was speaking, we want the entire county to realize that they're invited to this. So perhaps we should allow the commissioners or the county to also put this out on their blast so
Yeah.
that other folks
I
in
mean,
other areas.
they can definitely share it, and I mean, maybe more of a remind them so they know to do it. I don't see an issue with it, so. All right. I also want to pass along my thoughts to everybody that knows Mr. Thomas. He's a very nice gentleman, always had a good time talking with him. It kind of caught me off guard to hear about his passing, so he definitely was involved around here. If you didn't know him from the newspaper, you may have known him from helping with Mr. Dunmire's properties over the years. Mr. Minnick, I have to ask, what's the future of the paper? Is it continuing, I hope, and,
The Harrisonville Star has ceased publications.
okay,
The South Cass Tribune will be in mailboxes Thursday.
okay. Okay.
South what?
The
Would that-
South Cass Tribune.
Would that
Southcast
be
Tribune.
on that same subscription I paid for, or
Yeah.
it's just out of curiosity?
Yeah, that's what I'm curious.
Do we need to subscribe again?
Being taped, so.
You'll look into that.
And what's the answer?
The subscriptions,
Two parts.
as a courtesy, The staff of the new paper intends to fulfill people's subscriptions.
Okay.
However, the subscription money and all of that type of thing was part of the LLC of the old company. Therefore, we're doing it as at a loss,
Okay.
as a courtesy. So that is going to be our intent. So
Well-
more details will be available this week.
I like the paper enough, I'll pay for a subscription.
I was gonna say, I'll be glad to contribute.
Well, we appreciate that.
I got one from my dad, and he was very happy.
Well, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, I just know lots of people have been asking, and I thought, I don't really know.
No, we're very excited. We're very excited. If you like the old paper, you should like this paper.
Okay.
Linda Thompson, who is the former editor of the Democrat, is the publisher. And it'll be very much in the same vein.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, sir. And that's all I have. Hope everybody stays warm and,
And safe.
yep, and, I know I drove home in the dusting yesterday, and I think we saw about 8 wrecks. 2 of them were rollovers in the dusting, so it was a lot worse than what they said.
Hopefully Rodney is home soon.
That's right, so, all right, that's all I have this evening.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second. A motion from Alderman Dickerson and a second from Alderman Long to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Good night, everyone.